Good morning, baseball fans, and welcome back to Dan's Vintage Baseball PC. Don't be confused by the fancy name. It's just me and some baseball cards. And today we're going to talk about my Sandy Koufax player run. I know last week my Spawn video went on a little bit long. My son assures me that I would have had more views if it wasn't 24 minutes long. So this one's going to be a little shorter, in large part because Koufax's career was shorter than Spawn's. So this is the front page of Koufax's baseball reference page. He's born in 1935 in Brooklyn. He was born Sanford Braun. When he was a young child, his parents divorced. His mother later remarried Irving Koufax, a attorney in Brooklyn. And Sandy ultimately took his stepfather's name and adopted his stepfather pretty much as his father for his entire lifetime. And in fact, he's still alive, 87 years old, and still helping out in Dodgers spring training and appearing publicly. So Koufax grew up in Brooklyn, lived for a little bit on Long Island, moved back to Brooklyn, went to Lafayette High School, which is in the southwest portion of Brooklyn. Played baseball and basketball. One of his teammates was Fred Wilpon, later owner of the New York Mets. Koufax was the first baseman. He pitched a little bit, but when he went to the University of Cincinnati on a basketball scholarship, he played both varsity basketball and ultimately varsity baseball. Same coach of the team. That's the Cincinnati Bearcats in the 1950s. They had the same coach for baseball and basketball. He was scouted by a number of different teams, ultimately ended up signing with the Dodgers. The rule back then was if the signee had a bonus which was exceeding a certain amount, they had to stay with the main club. So Koufax is a 19-year-old, was on the historic 1955 Dodgers. He didn't pitch very much. I think he pitched in something like 12 games. But let's go to his stats page. Yeah, 12 games in 1955. And so his career starts when he's 19, and he spends all this time with the Dodgers. It's 3 years in Brooklyn and then 2 more years in LA without pitching very much. And so he ends up in 1961, and before the season starts, considering retiring. Gets some nice coaching, learns how to throw more strikes, learns the art of pitching a little more. And in 1961, he begins perhaps the greatest run of pitching by any pitcher in MLB history. He goes from a 500 pitcher to a dominant pitcher. He ends up winning 3 Cy Youngs, 1 MVP, finishes an MVP twice, second twice, and is an all-star every year from 1961 to 66. Wins World Series 55, he gets a ring. 59, he gets a ring. And then the Dodgers won the World Series in 63 and 65. At the end of the 1966 season, Sandy Koufax shocks the world and retires from baseball. But underneath it all, there was a significant amount of wear and tear on his arm, including, a arthritic condition in his elbow. And he had medical doctors telling him that if he didn't stop pitching, he would lose the use of his left arm for the rest of his life. So he retired at the age of 30 at the end of the 1966 season, which is perhaps his best season. People say 63, one or the other. They're both phenomenal 10-plus WAR seasons and dominant years for him. He is a first ballot Hall of Famer. He's inducted into the Hall of Fame, I believe, in 1973. Let's check that. Hall of Fame, 72, sorry. And he's voted probably about 85% of the ballots. And he still stands as the youngest member of the Hall of Fame, if I'm not mistaken. Well, let's get to his my PC of Sandy Koufax. As you can see, Koufax, these are the flagship cards. Does not have a Bowman card. As you know, Bowman's last year was 1955, so he could have had a 55 Bowman, which would have been a terrific card. but he does not. He has 55 through 66. Um, and as you can see, they're all headshots for the most part. 61 is a wind up, and 65, I'll talk about that later, is the stare down. So let me talk about a few of these cards individually. Um, this is the 1956 Koufax, which is an important card for me for a number of reasons. One, it is part of a complete 1956 Topps collection, which I will show off that set on a future episode. This is also a card that is a learning experience for me. As you can see down here, it is a PSA 4, but also a older label. I bought this from a perfectly legitimate guy on Facebook. Um, Seller offered the card at a PSA 4 price below comps, so I was excited to go in and buy it. But you can see, you might not be able to tell from this, but there are significant issues with this card. The upper left corner is dinged. There's some surface issues. It's a little faded. And when I got the card, I realized, oh wait, this is a 4, an old label 4. And now this would probably be a 2. So I overpaid for it, and I did the cardinal sin of collecting. I collected the grade. I didn't collect the card. So lesson learned. At some point, I'll be upgrading this, but right now, this is my 56 Koufax. The other card that I want to show off, or one of the other cards I want to show off, is the 58 Koufax, which I submitted. Trying to get this glare off it. I submitted it myself to SGC, and as you can see, obviously, you got a 4. This card is a nice lesson in buying for your collection without costing yourself any money. I bought a very large collection of Dodger cards, and I sold virtually all of them. I think I kept 2 or 3 of them, and I sold them for more than I bought them for individually. The breakup value was much greater than what I spent, and then I had enough money left over to keep this card and pay for the grading. At the time was $30 a card at SGC, and now this very, very nice Koufax 58 card is in my collection for free. The nice part about this card is that I think it's probably undergraded. It's really nicely centered. I think the 4 is basically because the corners are a little bit dinged, not too bad. This card is the 1962 4.5. I did not buy this card either. This card was given to me by my friends on Twitter as a Christmas present a couple of years ago. It was what they call a RAK, a R-A-K, a random act of kindness. And I got this RAK, like I said, from my friends on Twitter. And this 4.5 Koufax will be in my collection forever. Another card that I want to look at is the 1963 Fleer. This is not a flagship, and I'll go over some of the oddballs later. This is a singular set of Fleer that had Major League Baseball players, current players in it in 1963. I don't have many cards from this set, but I got this card in the back of, remember last week, in the back of the auction. I know this was a serious auction because I got it raw, which they do not have very often, raw cards in Sirius, but it was back on like page 30 of the auction. Really, really nice card. Sent it into SGC. Would have liked the 7, got the 6.5, but again, another card that's never going to leave my collection. The last card I want to show is the 65, and the reason I want to show this is because that label up there, I talked about this last week, CSG, perfectly legitimate grading company. In fact, they've been in the business of grading. They grade comics for decades. They became a grading company for cards a few years ago. They originally had these green labels. I sent this back in to get the brand new fancy black label. This is a 4. It is a legitimate 4. It could even be a little higher, honestly. But I bought this card on eBay for a fraction of the comps. I think I spent $35 or $40 to get this card, which is an amazing buy. If you got this as a 4 for SGC or PSA, it would be more than twice that. So Nice value to be had. Beautiful card. And the 1965 Koufax is one of my favorite pictures of him. It's the stare down, and it's just terrific. It looks great in this set. So that's the flagship stuff. The let's go back to the photos. There we go. I have some oddballs of Koufax. The 63 Fleer we already spoke about. Above that is the 1964 Topps Giants. That set, I did not collect this card individually. I've got that as a complete set. 1964 Giants. We'll do an episode on that at some point. And then the middle piece is the, let's see if I can get this a little bigger. Yeah, it's Manny's Baseball Land. Manny's Baseball Land was a shop on River Avenue, which is one of the roads right next to Yankee Stadium. And Manny's Baseball Land did baseball card posters, larger posters, and then they also did these sort of smaller things, which are you're able to get into a PSA holder. This came available to me in an auction at a extremely reasonable price, and I picked it up because it looks like a spring training photograph of Koufax, and it's just nice. It's a really large. It's the largest slab in my collection. So that's the Koufax PC. Just wanted to talk about this picture, which is Koufax's perfect game against the Cubs. As you may know, he threw 4 no-hitters, one in 62, 3, 4, and 65. The 65 wasn't just a no-hitter. It was a perfect game. And just a few facts about his perfect game. 1 hit in the game. The Dodgers got 1 hit, and they scored 1 unearned run. It was a 1-0 game. There have been other perfect games that were 1-0, but this perfect game is the fewest amount of hits by the team that threw the perfect game. He threw it in Dodger Stadium in September against the Cubs of 1965, and he did have the advantage of having the Cubs lineup with a bunch of rookies. There were a couple of debuts in this game. So it wasn't Santo and Billy Williams were in the game, but for the most part, it was a very young and inexperienced Cubs lineup. The other thing about this game, which I love, time of the game was 1 hour and 43 minutes. So you hear people complaining about the pitch clock this year. Back in the good old days, the games were faster and shorter. Attendance was 29,000. Dodger Stadium has a capacity of 50 some odd thousand. So this was about half empty. In a season when the Dodgers would eventually go on and beat the Minnesota Twins in 7 games to win the World Series. So that's all the slides I got. And that's the video for today. I expect next week to be back with my friend who is a super collector of Stan Musial cards. So I expect that next week will be Stan Musial. I know I promised Roberto Clemente this week. My Roberto Clemente friend had a family emergency and needed to postpone. So we'll have him on at some point in the near future. So we'll see you soon. Come back next week and watch the Musial. And this was the Koufax. You see the picture over here? That's a mantle picture from a Baltimore restaurant in 1954, 1955. I'm going to do a show on that in the very near future, maybe after the Musial. So anyway, thanks for tuning in. Take care. Bye-bye.